The Unfiltered Human on the Fringe episode 10 Control, when safety becomes a cage themes, power seeking, fear of chaos, hyper-independence. Manipulation includes trauma responses, obsessive routines, and control as illusion control can look like confidence. It can feel like order. But underneath it all, it's often a mask for fear of chaos, of collapse, of being seen, or of being hurt again. For some of us, control isn't about power at all. It's about survival. I'm James, and in this episode of The Unfiltered Human on the Fringe, we explore the cage that control becomes. The one we build with good intentions, out of safety, out of pain. We'll explore hyper-independence, trauma responses, manipulation, and the quiet terror of letting go. Because sometimes the need to control isn't about domination, it's about not falling apart. The illusion of order. There have been many times in my life when I felt like if I didn't stay in control of my emotions, my environment, or the people around me, everything would unravel. That pressure was intense. I wasn't trying to dominate. I was trying to hold myself together. The truth is, a lot of it came from self-deprecating cycles and unhealed emotional wounds. I didn't know any other way. I wasn't masking. I wasn't manipulating. I was just trying to make things feel okay, and the harder I tried, the worse it all became. Psychological insight. The need for control is often rooted in early relational trauma, where unpredictability leads to a belief that only tight regulation of emotions or environments will prevent pain. This aligns with what attachment theorists call an anxious preoccupied pattern, where control becomes a coping mechanism, not a choice. Reference: Bowlby, J. 1969 Attachment and Loss Insight Prompt. Sometimes a need for control is the nervous system's way of begging for predictability. Self-reflection prompt. When have you felt like everything would fall apart unless you held it all together? Theory in action prompt. Identify one area of your life where you can release just 10% of the control and see what changes. Power or protection. I've never been one to try to control others, but I can now see that some of my behaviours came from a deep need for protection. Control, for me, was a wall, a shield against vulnerability. It was unconscious most of the time, but it was there. I wasn't trying to win. I was trying to stay safe. Psychological insight. What often looks like control seeking is a protective adaptation to vulnerability. In trauma psychology, this is called functional rigidity, the tendency to narrow behavior to avoid perceived threat. It's not about power, it's about protection. Reference: Herman, J. 1992, Trauma and Recovery Insight Prompt. Control is often a response to vulnerability, not a desire for power. Self-reflection prompt. What part of your control pattern is a protection strategy? Theory in action prompt. The next time you feel the need to control a situation, pause and ask, what am I protecting myself from? Routines, rituals, and the mask of stability. I've used discipline and routines to soothe anxiety and find stability, and they've helped. But when those structures became too rigid, I started to feel trapped. It was never my intention to impose that on anyone else, but I know now that sometimes it came across that way. Still, the awareness I've developed has helped me find balance. I can now honor discipline without losing my freedom. Psychological insight. Routines and rituals provide perceived control, which can reduce anxiety. But when they become compulsive or inflexible, they shift into maladaptive coping. This mirrors the function of safety behaviors in anxiety disorders, helpful until they aren't. Reference: Abramowitz, J. S. 2006, Understanding and Treating Obsessive-Compulsive Disorder Insight Prompt. Stability becomes a cage when it stops serving your growth. Self-reflection prompt. What routine or habit started as support, but now feels like a prison? Theory in action prompt. Add spontaneity to one daily task this week, let it be messy and see how you respond. Hyper-independence. The fear of need. There were times I asked for help, but it came with strings attached. That taught me to rely on no one, but that strength came at a cost. I started to resent people. I shut down emotionally. I saw interdependence as a threat instead of a connection. But I also saw how hyper-independence blocked real intimacy. I kept people out to protect myself, and in doing so, kept myself alone. Psychological insight. Hyper-independence is often a trauma response rooted in early experiences of conditional love or support. It mimics avoidant attachment styles, where asking for help feels dangerous or degrading. Over time, it limits our capacity for relational depth. Reference: Levine A. and Heller, RT10, attached insight prompt. Independence without vulnerability is just isolation in disguise. Self-reflection prompt. When have you refused help, not out of pride, but out of fear of being hurt again? Theory in action prompt. Practice asking for one small thing from someone safe, without over-explaining or apologizing. Control as a trauma response. That moment at my nonno's birthday party still lingers. I sang, but they said I didn't. I was accused, shamed, and silenced, even though I was present and sincere. That moment taught me I couldn't trust others to see me truthfully. There have been other times when I sought control because I felt powerless, not maliciously, but unconsciously. I now see how those actions affected others, even if I was trying to keep myself safe. Psychological insight. Experiences of misattunement in childhood, being unseen, unheard, or misunderstood, often lead to control seeking as a way to reclaim agency. Trauma disrupts the sense of self, and control becomes a strategy for preventing further invalidation. Reference: Siegel, D. 2012, The Developing Mind Insight Prompt. When you're not seeing clearly, control can feel like the only way to exist. Self-reflection prompt. What childhood experience taught you that being misunderstood was dangerous? Theory in action prompt. Revisit a moment of misunderstanding. Write the version of that memory where your truth was believed. Manipulation versus influence. There were times I withheld, persuaded, or tried to prove my value to others. It wasn't conscious manipulation. It came from immaturity and a lack of emotional understanding. I wanted to be safe. I wanted to be recognized. Sometimes I projected. Sometimes I wasn't secure within myself. But when I started owning it, truly owning it, it changed everything. Psychological insight. Manipulation often arises from emotional dysregulation, not malicious intent. When individuals lack the tools to express needs directly, they may use indirect strategies like guilt, persuasion, or withdrawal to protect themselves. Awareness transforms manipulation into emotional literacy. Reference: Linehan, MM 1993, Skills Training Manual for Treating Borderline Personality Disorder Insight Prompt. Manipulation is often an unconscious attempt to meet a need that feels too shameful to express. Self-reflection prompt. When have you tried to prove your worth instead of simply showing up as you? Theory and action prompt. The next time you feel the urge to convince, pause and ask, what need am I afraid to state clearly? Letting go without falling apart. The deeper I went into my inner work, shadow work, stoic thought, trauma theory, the more I began to trust the unknown. I came to see that I can't control others. I can't control their reactions, beliefs, or emotions, but I can control how I show up, how I regulate myself, how I embody peace. Now, I don't fear the unknown. I trust that I've walked through enough storms to handle whatever comes. I meet others where they're at, with empathy instead of judgment. I don't perform anymore, I am. Psychological insight. Letting go of control requires a strong internal locus of control, the belief that we can handle life regardless of external outcomes. This is supported by mindfulness, nervous system regulation, and trauma-informed self-awareness. Trust is not naivete, it is earned through resilience. Reference: Rothschild, B2000, The Body Remembers Insight Prompt. Trust isn't about predicting the future, it's about trusting yourself to handle whatever comes. Self-reflection prompt. What belief are you willing to release so you can soften control without collapsing? Theory and action prompt. Write a mantra for trust, one that reminds you of your capacity when things feel out of your hands. Unlearning the cage control gave us order. It gave us certainty. But eventually it gave us burnout, isolation, and fear. We weren't wrong for seeking safety. We were just misled into thinking we had to grip it tightly to have it. In truth, control is a poor substitute for trust. It's a wall we build when we don't yet feel safe, and walls protect, but they also isolate. This episode isn't about giving up responsibility. It's about remembering that life happens in the space between action and surrender, between preparation and flow, between boundaries and openness. Let go, but let yourself be held too. This has been the Unfiltered Human on the Fringe. If this episode stirred something in you, curiosity, reflection, or even discomfort, sit with it. Let it speak. That's where your growth begins. Until next time, stay grounded, stay honest, and keep walking toward the truth that's yours to live. James Miller. If you found value in today's episode, you may also be interested in my broader project, The Inversiverse, a series exploring the hidden architecture of perception, identity, control, and consciousness. Across 20 episodes, The Inversiverse dissects indoctrination, language, media manipulation, dark psychology, belief systems, and the evolution of self in the digital age. You can find all episodes of The Inversiverse on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, and Substack by searching this place called Earth. These ideas aren't shared to convince you, but to invite you to think, feel, and perceive more consciously in a world designed to keep you distracted. Overview of The Inversiverse, a journey through the mirrors of mind, culture, and control. Episodes 1 to 3 introduce foundational ideas around indoctrination, perception, and manipulation. Episode 4 explores how language, symbols, and cultural norms are used to shape thought. Episode 5 investigates control systems, media narratives, and the illusion of choice. Episodes 6 to 7 dives into collective belief structures and the psychology of mass behavior. Episode 8 focuses on marketing, control theory, game theory, and critical thinking. Episode 9 covers love relationships, human mating, gender dynamics, and red-blue pill ideologies. Episode 10 unpacks dark psychology, the occult, Satanism, and the dark triad personality types. Episode 11 The Simulated Self examines identity, ego, and the rise of post-human consciousness. Episode 12 The Spell of the Mind inquires into language, illusion, and physiology of thought. Episode 13 Conscious Seduction journeys through persuasion, propaganda, and the unseen forces of the mind. Episode 14 The Myth of Sanity sheds light on madness, genius, and the edge of perception. Episode 15 The Algorithmic Mind probes influence, identity, and invisible architects. Episode 16 The Noise of Knowing reveals overload, obsession, and the age of infinite information. Episode 17 Belief Machines delves further into language, desire, and the engine of reality. Episode 18 Submerged Signals examines how the unseen shapes the self. Episode 19 The Alchemy Within traces food, frequency, and the forgotten intelligence of the body. Episode 20 Encoded Flesh scrutinizes and opens up to the forgotten language of the body, DNA, and biological consciousness.